if you were trying to design a procedure that would have the potential to plant misleading information or new information in the witness's memory, I can't really think of a better way of going about it. It doesn't greatly surprise me that we now start to see some inconsistency of the later statements with the earlier statements.
Tracy positively identifying the cagoule means the police now have a witness who can connect the jacket to the killer. And as William Gage's DNA is on this jacket, he's now placed directly in Acacia Way on the night of the murder. William Gage did have an alibi for the night of the 7th of March. He claims that he and his girlfriend Anne Ross spent the evening at this bar in Glasgow's West End. But in court, Anne Ross's testimony was challenged when a mobile telephone call was traced to a handset which William Gage was believed to have used shortly after 10:30 p.m. That telephone call was made from Easterhouse. Remember, this was where the white Saab was found.
That all may mean something, but what it does not constitute is hard connecting evidence which proves that he committed the murder of Mr. McElroy.
William Gage refuses to explain who made that call on his mobile phone on the night of the murder. He's adamant, though, that it wasn't him.
We don't know exactly what he was doing around the time of the murder. But then again, we wouldn't expect that from someone like William Gage, who has come into contact with the police in his past life and who's not unknown to them. Not everyone who conducts that kind of life has always got their story straight on any given night of the year.
With his alibi discredited, the final nail in William Gage's coffin is hammered home by Tracy McElroy. In court, she's asked if she can recognise the man who killed her husband. She picks out William Gage.
It's the eyes. I'll never forget the eyes. Scary eyes.
That's certainly an issue of concern, that in the court she's talking about the eyes. She's never mentioned them previously. We also know she's seen the mannequin where the eyes were prominent.
I'm not sure that anyone in Scotland would want to be in the position of being convicted or even having to help police with inquiries where the focus of the evidence was whether or not a person's eyes were so distinctive on a dark night as they fled a location. I'm not sure that that's, in my mind at least, the strongest evidence I've ever heard for identifying someone.
Tracy McElroy has never mentioned the killer's eyes in the 2 years since her husband's murder. Yet now her identification from the dock is the final piece of the jigsaw connecting William Gage to the shooting. Stephen Madden, the witness who'd apparently got the best view of the killer's face, refuses to identify William Gage in court. He sticks by his description of the killer as 5'10", round-faced, with short, dark hair. William Gage is 6'2", with long hair. But Stephen Madden's testimony doesn't matter. Charles Bowman has done enough to hint it was a white Saab, not a Volvo, in Cambuslang that evening. 3 particles of FDR on the cagoule found in the car are enough to hint that a gunman has worn it. And William Gage's DNA ties him to the jacket as well as the getaway car. On the 9th of February 2004, William Gage is found guilty of the murder of Justin McElroy. He's sentenced to 20 years in prison. We believe, having examined all the evidence against him, that William Gage was not the man who killed Justin McElroy. We believe that if his case were to be tried again today, he would not be convicted on the eyewitness testimony used against him. We have significant new evidence which casts serious doubt on the white Saab being the getaway car used by the killer, as the Crown claims. In fact, we believe that the car, which contained all the forensic evidence used to tie William Gage to the crime, was never even in Cambuslang that evening. And we're not the only ones to have doubts. Lord Emsley was the judge in William Gage's trial. This is his report, which he submitted to the appeal court after the conviction. In a highly unusual move, Lord Emsley is severely critical of the decision to convict William Gage, describing Tracy McElroy's identification of the clothing as uncorroborated and significantly contradicted.
If the jacket in particular was not proved to be the one worn by the killer at the locus, then the whole of the Crown's evidence of DNA and FDR would become irrelevant and academic. In that event, it would be difficult or impossible to establish any link by corroborated evidence between the appellant and the murder.
What links William Gage to the murder is the white Saab. All the ballistic and forensic evidence against him is found inside this car.
There's two things we're talking about here. We're talking about a crime that was committed involving a firearm in the Cambuslang area of Glasgow on the night of the 7th of March. Then the spotlight shifts. Within an hour, within 60 minutes or 90 minutes, a burned out car is found in the Easterhouse area of Glasgow. What the Crown had to do in the court case was to establish a link between those two events. Whether or not those two events were actually connected, in my mind, some doubt resides.
If this Saab did not make the short journey from Cambuslang to Easterhouse, then the entire Crown case against William Gage collapses. William Gage's lawyers demanded to view CCTV footage covering the roads in between Cambuslang and Easterhouse. If the white Saab was used as a getaway vehicle, then surely it would appear on one of these cameras. But delays in obtaining the tapes mean the CCTV footage has never been viewed by anyone connected with William Gage's defence. But the footage has been seen by the police. Tonight we can reveal the white Saab found in Easterhouse, William Gage's getaway car according to the Crown, does not appear in any of the numerous CCTV tapes viewed by the police. And we have the paperwork to prove it. The information it contains was never revealed to the jury at the trial.
You may wish to note that there is no CCTV recording of the Saab motor vehicle on any of the tapes viewed by the police.
If the white Saab doesn't appear on the CCTV footage, then we can't be sure it is in any way related to the murder of Justin McElroy. And if we can't connect the Saab to the murder, then neither can we connect the jacket with William Gage's DNA on to the murder. Therefore, we can't connect William Gage to the murder. This leaves only Tracy McElroy's identification of William Gage as the one remaining piece of evidence which puts him in Acacia Way that night. She identified William Gage by his eyes. Once again, the trial judge, Lord Emsley, is sceptical.
No direct link between the appellant and the murder could be established unless the jury accepted Tracy McElroy's uncorroborated claim to identify the killer by his eyes and at the same time rejected Stephen Madden's description of the killer's face, which did not match the appellant at all.
Tracy McElroy's identification of William Gage in court is known as doc identification. It's become hugely controversial.
Doc identification is fantastic theatre. It's fantastic if you're a lawyer trying to get a certain result from your jury, because it's theatrical. You have got someone being asked, do you recognise anyone in the court today? Or words to that effect. Now, you'd have to be pretty stupid not to know that the person you're meant to identify is the person who is standing between, usually, two members of the police force opposite you, looking slightly worried.
There are huge problems with doc identification. Other legal systems around the world don't use a doc identification as formal identification evidence. I believe Scotland is unique in its reliance on this particular method.
Since William Gage's conviction, there's been a major challenge to Scotland's treatment of doc identification. It's come from this man, James Holland. Unlike William Gage, James Holland took part in an identification parade. He'd been charged with assault and robbery, yet none of the victims could pick him out. Nevertheless, when the case came to court, one of the witnesses identified him in the dock.
Well, she basically comes in, sits down, looks around the court, then the PF asks her, can you see the accused man or person in court today? And she went, aye, that there.
It's like having a big arrow pointing towards someone. It couldn't be more obvious. Everyone, when they're asked to look, will look immediately at the dock.
The jury's all looking at me, the judge is looking at me, everybody's looking at me, and it's like a spotlight went on me.
In April, James Holland's conviction was quashed by the Privy Council in London. Scotland's dock identification system was heavily criticised.
People were pleased to hear about the challenge, and particularly pleased, I think, that something that had been taken for granted for so long but seemed so unfair was finally exposed.
While the courts continue to rely on dock identifications, I think they will continue to make wrongful convictions.
James Holland's case means potentially hundreds of convictions secured largely on dock identification are now open to challenge.
This is hugely significant for cases which have resulted in convictions already and where someone is perhaps challenging their conviction. The implications are that they also may have their convictions quashed if the identification evidence is open to the same criticisms.
One of these cases could be that of Luke Mitchell, sentenced to life for murdering his 14-year-old girlfriend, Jodie Jones.
Luke Mitchell case is, I think, a case where there were question marks over the identification by some of the civilian witnesses. I think any appeal where identification evidence was a big part of it, that will be looked at, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was part of what's looked at in the Luke Mitchell case.
The Miscarriages of Justice Organisation Scotland is now examining the case of William Gage. He's currently awaiting the outcome of his appeal, but he fears the worst. Neither the CCTV evidence nor the new thinking on eyewitness identification were heard at his appeal. But both could form part of a submission to the Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission. There are many unanswered questions about this case. Who did Justin McElroy owe the £50,000 to? Is this person the key to who pulled the trigger? William Gage remains behind bars here at Shotts Prison. He still protests his innocence. Can we say beyond reasonable doubt that the white Saab clumsily abandoned in Easterhouse was the getaway car? Can we say beyond reasonable doubt that William Gage was the man Tracy McElroy saw running from her house that evening? Can we say beyond reasonable doubt that William Gage murdered Justin McElroy?
I don't see any credible eyewitness identification evidence that links William Gage to this murder.
What isn't in doubt is that William Gage is no angel with numerous previous convictions. But does that make him a killer? Does that make him this killer?
Being almost guilty of murder is not good enough. Being guilty by association is not good enough. Being guilty because you're not straight about your past is not good enough. Being guilty because you can't explain where you were at any given moment of a life which maybe involves lots of not being able to explain moments is not good enough. The hurdle that's to be cleared is beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this case, there are many doubts.